Welcome, everybody, to another glorious episode of Cash Flow Positive. I'm your host, Kenny Bedwell, and the goal for today's episode is to bring in a very smart individual who can help you increase your cash flow and your ROI on your short-term rental through something he calls micro designs. And so basically how to not just do a complete refresh of your property, but be very strategic. He's going to break down his strategies step by step on how he does this, who he works with to pull this off, and really dive into how to go all in on your properties to get the highest returns. So one of the best in the industry, one of the smartest guys in the industry from a property management co-hosting standpoint, has got over 30 properties. Merritt Haris, welcome to the show. Tell us more about yourself.
Well, hi, my name is Merritt. I am a co-host, full-service property manager, currently mostly in upstate New York. And my motto for anyone I interact with and my clients is more money, bigger dreams, and best life. So it's really important for me to, when someone interacts with me, I want them to walk away with one of those items, right? Either bigger dreams, more money, or enjoying their life more. So I'm currently manage around 30 units, all STRs, and I love what I do.
Okay, sweet. So we were talking before the show, and I was saying to you earlier, I hate when we always have like really good conversations at the beginning, and I'm like, dang it, why don't I just hit record and then go? Because that's where people are like, oh yeah, and they like tell a story, and it's like really cool. But
Yes.
You told me at the beginning, I think this is really big. You officially you're full time property management now, and all the other stuff you do. So what I always like hearing these stories because I think it helps people, especially who are aspiring for that too, to realize at what point did you realize okay, I'm ready to go all in.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so this is my second full-time week in my business, so it's pretty fresh too. So all the feelings are there. Big feel like this is like a new office I'm in just because I have 4 kids, so I wanted a separate place to work. And so I think the big thing is actually dumbing a lot of stuff down. I think the biggest problem a lot of people have is they try to add too many things all at once. And the thing is, co-hosting is pretty easy. Obviously you get those really stressful moments, but just finding the system that works and continuing to double down on it. It's my entire journey from starting the business was end of 2021. So it only took me a few years. I probably could have stepped down last year, but I enjoyed that dual stream and all that. So, but really, it's just doubling down on the thing that works. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, but none of my other ventures they more ended up being hobbies, and didn't give me kind of the type of cash flow or income where I could say, hey, I don't need a day job to support me anymore. So yeah, so I think that's really it. It's just finding something that works and doubling down on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary. You've got 4 kids, right? Leaving quote unquote stability.
Mm-hmm.
So how long did it take you before you were okay, and you probably were ready sooner, I imagine. I don't know, you tell me, but how long did it take you before you were okay, I'm actually going to do this?
Yeah, so I guess one of the things folks say is when you can replace your living expenses, that's kind of the starting point. But I kind of went past that point just because I wanted to be more cautious with that, right? Having kids and providing for the kids and stuff. So I guess at a baseline, what I did is I was looking at my numbers from 2024 and looking at my net payout for my W-2. And I was geez, my net from my business was almost double my net from my day job. And that was last year. And I was okay, so something isn't adding up here, where I'm still too nervous about trusting and relying in my own abilities, right? Because I think a lot of it is mindset stuff where people don't trust in their ability to produce something that is worth a lot of money. And for me, it's definitely that was a big part of it, was switching my mindset to being even if I lost half my clients, I have skill sets and ability to produce things that make money, right? And make far greater than what I was making in my day job. Like I was making 85K. And so it's just like, I guess it was partly a mindset shift and partly like in terms of like logistically, like I want to at a baseline have a little higher cushion than my basic living expenses. So that's kind of how I figured it.
Yeah, and I also feel like too, one of the things where people are like, oh, if I quit my job, like now I have no income coming in, and that's like that. But it's like you forget about or you devalue the amount of time you now have available to you. And it's not like you're just going to sit there and do nothing, right? Like maybe if you were like, I'm going to quit my job and just go sit on the couch and watch TV all day. Okay, cool. Yeah, you're going to have $0 coming in. But now you have more time that you can invest in your business, which is going to have an ROI and a payout. And so that time, like, and I think that's where like people have to really start to look at what is their time worth. And you hit that point where you're like, well, dang, like I'm making double, in my business than my W-2. Like it's time for me to take that time. Like you kind of had that like self-realization that like ultimately it's like, my time's probably better spent like in my business than like working on someone else's business.
Yeah, yeah. And so like here's the thing that I realized too is that I absolutely, I have a great connection still with my former employer and actually manage some of their Airbnbs. But they're very traditional about like the 40-hour like on-site work week, right? They don't have kind of like that remote flexibility culture. They don't really have the culture of like, hey, here's your measurables, do it however you want and whatever time you want, which is how I think. Like, when I'm working with my team, I'm like, here's the outcome I'm looking for. That takes you 10 hours or 20, I don't care. Like, this is the outcome I need. And here's the time frame, right? So they're very traditional, like in the office, X amount of hours a week. And what's interesting, I was thinking to myself, because I'm really big on like team building and growing teams and like training and deploying and like getting my team to feel successful and to have their own accomplishments. And in that, I realized like how little hours I was working on my business. And like, you pull the lever that has the highest leverage. So like, I was like, geez, like some weeks I'm working 5 hours a week, on my business. And other weeks I'm working more, obviously, like in chaotic seasons or seasons of tons of onboarding, that kind of thing. But yeah, it was definitely that realization. Like here I am at an office 45 hours a week, making less than, so the light bulb went on. I mean, I think there is a very practical element to that too, where it's like you keep grinding until it's there. And then when it's there, you say like, now is my time. You have to have that serenity. And I definitely did. I was like, now is my time. Like, I'm going to figure it out, burning the ships or burning the boats or however they say, and I'm jumping full in. So
yeah,
that's kind of the phase I'm in.
Was it Tony Robbins said that or something about or I don't know if he said that specifically, but about like the burning the ships thing where the Spanish sailors came and the captain, in order to kind of get the troops to fight and to take and actually claim the land, he burned their ships so they couldn't leave. So he's like, you're stuck here, right? Like you're all in. So anyway, I think that's really important and a good segue into our topic today, right? So how do we make your STR or an STR unique in general? And I think it ties directly into going all in. But going all in can be very expensive. So when you're sitting down with a client, let's get into it. So when you're sitting down with a client, you obviously like, I think everyone listening to this podcast knows they have to invest into their property. But investing in properties can range, and people have different opinions of what that means. So let's start there. When you're sitting down with a new client that you're onboarding, and they're like, hey, I'm going to launch a property or I'm thinking about redoing it. How do you game plan with them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things I'm seeing, and I see this in a lot of your content too. I think we're seeing this across the industry, right? Where COVID was this deliciously easy time to invest. Where, right, like, the joke I always say is you could put a stained mattress in grandma's spare bedroom and start printing cash. That was kind of like this time period. A lot of people jumped in, right? Because they saw how easy it was. It was fast money. It was easy money. And now we're in a maturing market, right? Like the market's maturing, things are softening a little bit. Obviously, Airbnb is still reporting growth and all of that, but like it's a maturing market. So what does that mean? Just like in any other market, is it's just more competitive. Like there's a lot more competition out there, and these kind of like vanilla listings that were just easy and worked don't work as well anymore. So one of the things I'm doing is with my clients and with future clients is encouraging them to do these like micro bursts of improvements on their listings. So for example, you have a listing and it's cute, but it's basic, right? It's super basic. And the owners come to me and they're like, I used to make so much money. Like, what's going on? Like, my bookings are slowing down, my revenue is going down. And so, obviously the traditional pitch is like, do a full redesign, right? That could be like 50, 60K of improvements to do a full redesign. So what we're doing now is we're offering kind of these like micro designs where you pick one area of your listing and you do like an intense refresh on just that area, right? So instead of spending like 50, 60K, you're spending like 15 to 20. But the intent is this, like we know that like high amenities and high design converts really well, right? We know that the data shows that like the revenue increases and improves when people have an intense focus on both of those things. So the idea is let's do that in a microdose. So you pick a wall, or you pick a corner, or you pick a room, and you do a very interactive kind of like mural design game wall. So it's like this kind of hybrid area that is both interactive and also extremely bold in look. And so you do that, you refresh with 5 to 10 new pictures that become your new hero photos. And suddenly this like super bland listing that is just basic and is kind of declining in revenue has some like click scroll stopping images and actual interactive things that are fun in their listing at ideally less than half of doing a full redesign, right? So it's like you see all these markets where people are just like exiting, selling their listing, or going back to LTRs. And this is kind of a value prop. Like you don't need to do that. Like just do a micro burst to improve your listing. And, ideally we do the whole deliverable for them. So it's really just a turnkey thing, and see the ROI, basically see the return on investing in that micro area. So that's kind of the idea. And I'm pitching more and more of my clients on that, and more of new clients on that is, listen, it's a little more competitive now. You can't just go, Wayfair furniture and call it a day. You have to have something that allows you to stand out in your market.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that. Now, are you doing that just in your regions that you're working on, or are you doing that everywhere?
So right now, my main markets are just for management on the management side are upstate New York and Cape Cod, Massachusetts. So those are my main markets right now. But that service is not geographically bound, so that we could do that in multiple markets.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So ideally, I'd like it to be kind of in my market because I think it's kind of a new offering that we're doing. So it'd be great if it was in upstate New York or in the Northeast at least, but we're definitely open to doing it outside of those regions. And the other thing I failed to mention is there's a fast turnaround time, right? So like the big thing is like with a full redesign, you may be out a month, you may be out longer than a month. Our ideal is that like you can turn this around in 2 weeks with proper execution, right? So it's like a quicker turnaround, you see the ROI, and it's done for you, and suddenly you have this like burst of like interesting, unique offering that stands out from your competitors without shelling out 50, 60, 70K.
What are some ideas, like that you've had for this? Like any examples or anything you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned, it's kind of like a combination of interactive and design. So it's like not just a mural, right? Like murals are great. But it's not just that. So the idea I have is kind of like, you almost picture like a micro game room. So you do have like, so one of the mock-ups we created was this real dark themed wall. So it had a fully blacked out, 2 fully blacked out arcades and a fully blacked out, like one of those like little basketball hoops things. And then the wall was a real dark themed accent wall with neon signs. So that's one idea. But the other ideas is like you do something that's kind of more Instagram worthy, where you do kind of photo op moment. And I don't just mean like a green wall, but like maybe like tag yourself with the wing wall, which is cheesy but trendy. Kind of like post a pin on a map. So it's kind of like meant to be engaging and interactive. But mostly it's just like think of a micro game room design compacted into one area. Um, so that was kind of one of the ideas we had, like very much so beyond just a mural, right? Because there's tons of muralist service out there. They'll even travel and they'll do a really cool mural. But the idea is that it's interactive, that it actually creates kind of like a fun interactive area in the unit.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I've been really honing in and focusing in on this, like this same concept of like, instead of just bringing in, especially in these more competitive markets, upstate New York and Cape Cod, like I'm in upstate New York. I mean, the competition is just like, is not on the same level as like the Smokies or Orlando or some of these other areas. And so, it's like people's budget, like most of the time people are going to buy in like more traditional vacation markets that are more competitive. And so what I've been telling people is like, instead of just rolling in with the typical amenity package, hot tub, maybe a barrel sauna, some of these markets are going to put in pickleball courts, arcade machines, pool table, I don't know what else, just like a mural for, okay, cool. I've got the Fab Five, right? Like I got that. Instead, it's like pick 1-2 spaces. Like if everybody has the same amenities and you have to have those amenities, but that doesn't make you special and that's not going to guarantee returns. It's the uniqueness like you're talking about. It's like pick 1 or 2 spaces that you can go all in on. We can burn the ship. You can literally like make it something special, and you're not having to do that to the entire property.
Yes, exactly.
So
yeah, and so you could, and it's funny like how few people do this. Like literally go to Airbnb, type in your market, type in your bedroom or guest count, and scroll the top listings. Like so few people actually do that. And you scroll the top, like you mentioned, upstate New York is not super competitive. And this is why every time I'm chatting with some investors, or especially like people that are interested in getting in the space, I'm like, this area is so ripe for super property. There's like hardly any, right? There's hardly any super properties in upstate New York. A lot of upstate New York real estate's super affordable still too. And so it's very much like you scroll that top, maybe page 1, page 2 of Airbnb, and I can tell you right now that you won't see something like this. You might see 1 or 2, but like it's just, there's not that much competition. So instantly you're an outlier. Like you do this micro infused interactive wall, you're instantly an outlier, like right off the bat. And if you could do that for $20K turnkey, and like your payback period is like 6 months to a year, probably less, why wouldn't you? Why would, especially if you're like, my listing's on page 3, like I don't get any bookings, like, and your listing is all cream color and
gray,
millennial
gray,
agreeable gray.
Yeah.
If I see that paint color again, and I'll have you know, I haven't done my new accent wall yet, so this is not my color.
Yeah, you know what? So funny thing you say it. Yeah, it's the same thing here. We the house we moved to, all the walls are gray, black,
yes, exactly.
black paint too. So you just look at the wall and there's a mark on it. So anyway,
exactly, yeah. I got this like really cool dark green color. I'm gonna do like a little podcast area in here for content, and got a cool little thing. But I just moved in this office mid-June, so. Yeah,
it's a I get it. Yeah, I'm still working with my designer on mine. So anyway, Paige, if you can hear me, let's get it going. So anyway, okay. So I think that there's a lot of value to that. But when you're sitting down with people, so you look at their listing, let's say it's all gray or beige or neutral colors. How do you attack what spaces to focus on, what, and we kind of talked a little bit earlier about what specifically, but like, how do you go okay, yeah, we should do the game room, or we should focus on a bedroom or 2 bedrooms or something like that?
Yeah. So like, I think really what it is, so I'll give you an example right now, right? I'm looking at a client who has a 2-bedroom, and typically I don't take smaller bedrooms on, right? I don't take smaller houses on just because they tend to not do as well. But I was like, listen, I'd be willing to work with you, but like you have to be willing to go really, really bold with this listing. Like just really scroll stopping, unique, which again, I said there's not much competition in this market, and I mean that. So I think this 2 unit could do well if it did that. But I think, in terms of like, I come from a project management background. And so when I walk a space, I try to envision like how well how usable it'll be in that space. But I also try to practically think like, how will this work um, just logistically within the space. But in terms of how I pick a space, I think it's really like, especially for this micro design thing, you want pretty much all you need is a single wall. Like it's not, it's not like, okay, we need to do a full garage conversion into a game room, right? Which is like a pretty big build out, has great conversion, but this isn't that. It's like, do you have a wall? Do you have a wall that we could do this on? And it could be a dining room wall, it could be a living room wall. It could be even literally in a large like foyer or entryway hallway space that's kind of underutilized. That's kind of how I pick for this micro design concept. Is like it's not as you have a single wall, we can do it, pretty much.
Gotcha. Do you now when you're going to these new clients? So like for this one that was like the 2-bedroom, and you're saying like go all in. Are they telling you what they want to do, or are you telling them, like, you coaching them through the process?
Yeah, so that, I guess it depends on how experienced the investor is. That particular client is a new STR investor. So it's pretty much like my full guidance. And that's going to be a full build out. That's not going to be a micro design. That's going to be like a full furnished top to bottom. We're probably going to redo some of the kitchen. He's going to put new siding on the house. So that one's going to be a little different from the concept I'm talking about. But in that case, like that client is like hasn't really been in the space. So they're very reliant on my input in terms of what converts well. Um, but then, if I'm working with another client that's like more experienced, the sell is definitely like, hey, listen, your listing is just bland. That's why it's not performing well. And then I kind of try to show them the data on how interactive aspects and bold design converts well. So yeah, really client dependent, I think.
Are you using particular softwares and things to like come up with these designs?
So I'm not the designer. So I'm like partnering with other designers. So they handle kind of the design aspect. I'm the project manager. I'm kind of doing the sales aspect as well, like meeting with people, consulting with them. So in terms of like doing the actual mock-ups and designs, that's completely out of my league. That's not something I'm doing. But no, and in terms of software to design, like it's more so for me, it's more so just like a basic CRM to track like people's needs, their interest level, kind of the sales pipeline more so than anything. And then if they're interested and if they meet all the criteria, right? Like it's urgent, they have the money, they're ready to go, then that's when the designer gets involved for mock-ups. So it's like, I don't really get into that yet, but I personally don't have any type of design background, admittedly.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, neither do I. I was curious if you're like, we're looking at a particular software or something, but
no, I mean, in terms of the ideas, right? Because like the ideas is part of the important part, right? Is like, and even like when I introduced this idea, I interviewed several designers. I think I interviewed like 8, and like not even every designer has the right mindset for this idea. And so
that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Like I think that let's sit on that, because you're from a property man, and this is really important for everybody listening. Like he's doing property management. So he's looking for designers who can help bring, because he's doing the marketing, he's doing the sales. So Merritt, when you're looking for designers, let's talk about that. What questions are you asking them to see if they align with your vision?
Yeah. So the thing I noticed the most is that designers are like comfortable in the zone that they have their strength in, right? So like their strength might be like the whole house design, right? So their strength might be like cohesion across an entire design. I don't care about that. I actually don't care about cohesion that much. Obviously, I don't want to do like some 70s disco theme in like in a cowboy Airbnb. Like I don't want to go like, push up against the grain on a design that might already be in place. But like a lot of the time, so part of the interview process was like kind of asking for brainstorming from the designer in terms of what they think would convert well once I shared the big idea. And a lot of designers came with a mural, right? And I'm like, that's not really what this is. And so I tried to gauge. There's a couple of things. So one of the things I've noticed is a lot of designers don't think in terms of like ROI of interactive amenities. They think in terms of cohesive design, right? They're great at putting together a very cohesive design. But in terms of like what activities in an Airbnb convert really well and are click worthy and that, a lot of the designers just don't think that way. So that is a lot of the questions I ask is like, what do you think would convert really well in terms of guest experience? What do you think would convert really well in terms of raising the ADR? And kind of then asking them for just a quick mock-up. I'm like, don't waste a ton of time on this. Just throw together a quick mock-up for me. And that's kind of how I gauge, like, all right, who gets this idea? Like, who really gets it? And I definitely don't think that it's an idea that's like, just grab any designer and it'll work. They have to understand the big idea. And even with the designers I'm wanting to partner with, it's a lot of like, listen, I'm not a designer, but can we try this? Can we try this? It's a lot of like teasing it out. And so you mentioned tools earlier, like definitely ChatGPT and AI has been very helpful to like tease out this idea before I even brought it to anybody. And so kind of teasing out like what is ultimately interactive, not just beautiful. Like we want beautiful, but we want interactive. So yeah, so in that process, it was an interesting realizing like as I'm talking to all these designers, this isn't a great fit for every designer. It's just not. It has to be a designer who has the right eye for that idea.
Yep. I think that, man, that's a good nugget there, because when our listeners are interviewing designers, what you said, you want like we don't just want beautiful, we want like interactive design. So things that help, it's really marketing, right? And people assume like high level design helps like specifically your marketing, and they're like the two and two go hand in hand. I think that can be true with the right high level design, but it's more so about, is the marketing like, because you're thinking about, you're selling the experience, and if the experience is too generic, it could be beautiful generic, it doesn't sell the experience. And so it's about aligning on both ends. And so finding a designer, my tip from that was just finding a designer who understands, more of the, I think part of the marketing side of it. Like, this is going to be a short-term rental. How do we sell it, the experience of that short-term rental through the design? That's going to make sense. So
yeah, that's exactly how I put it actually. And I think you said this in one of your earlier podcasts, is like creating the moat, right? Design is so easy to copy. Like, you know how many posts I've seen, like, this person stole my exact design, dude, pull up Pinterest, do exactly what you see in the picture. Like, I'm not saying, like, there's definitely an eye for design, but it's easy to copy. And so not saying that a micro, like, experience-based activity wall isn't easy to copy, because I think it could be, but it's not. There's an element to it where you are selling experiences. You're not just selling beautiful. And like beautiful, I think does help convert for sure, like what you said. But I like how you said that, because that's exactly what I'm telling people. I'm like, if this is kind of a catchphrase I tell my clients too. If people want a place to sleep, they'll book a hotel. If people want an experience, they'll book an Airbnb. If you ask yourself this question, is my Airbnb an experience? And the answer is no, you've already answered why your revenue sucks. Right. There's your answer. Is my Airbnb an experience? The answer is no. That's why your revenue sucks. Because if someone's booking a place to sleep, they're going to book a hotel. That's it. If I'm just looking for a place to sleep, if I'm going to a conference and I just need a place to sleep, I'll book a hotel. If I'm bringing my 4 kids along, I'm booking an experience, right?
Something to occupy their time. Yeah,
exactly.
For sure. No, I think that's really good. Okay, so really understanding and your designer and making sure they're on the same page is, part of this like micro design aspect. So once they create, assuming you have a good designer, they create the design for it, and then it starts to get executed. What is your what is your kind of go to market strategy beyond just like get new photos of it? Like, what do you recommend people do?
Yeah, for sure. Because part of it has like the Instagram ability, right? And we're not like, we don't, at least currently, we're not offering any type of like social media package or anything, which ChatGPT really wanted me to do.
Yeah.
So, but honestly, there's an upsell there for sure. But like, that's not necessarily something that's included in the offer. But in my mind, the way it works is because oftentimes you look at bland listings, there's multiple aspects missing. The aspect I already mentioned is bland. The second aspect is like, iPhone photos, right? So part of the thing is like, listen, vetting, finding, and deploying the right photographer to give you 5 to 10 standout click-worthy photos of this new design, right? Because here's the thing. We know design and amenities convert well, but no one said it had to be the whole house, right? You can get 5 to 10 great pictures of an interactive wall, right? And that sells an experience. So that's kind of the idea. It is pro photos, but beyond that, like I think there's a lot of potential if the owner took their own path, or if someday we offered the path of, listen, the wall is supposed to be bold enough that it has a viral element to it, right? So it's like take your bland listing and turn it into something that's like interesting and like could really be scroll stopping for people on social media as well. So there's a great avenue there to market that way, right? Ideally, that leads to direct bookings and other things as well. But right now, it's very much just like design it really well, design it very interactive, and then market it really well through the platforms you're already on.
Mm-hmm. No,
I think there's an element of your copy has to reflect it as well. You're not going to just leave your same exact copy in there. You're going to start highlighting what makes your listing unique, what people love about it.
okay, cool. No, that's really helpful. What else? What other thoughts you have, or anything you haven't talked about with this micro design idea?
I think, yeah. So the one other element, and we kind of touched on this a tiny bit, and I still have to flesh this out a little in more detail, but it's the concept of like, we want to try in this deliverable, we want to design it with your market in mind. So we do some of that digging to say, what is the thing on this micro design that will truly make your listing one of one? Right? So you're investing less than a full redesign, obviously, but the idea is we want to make your listing a standout listing. So obviously in some markets, it's more competitive, right? You got like the Orlandos, you got the Smokies. It's a little harder to make that promise because there's just so much uniqueness and so much like really, really super listings, really great super listings. But in most like mid-sized metro markets or even smaller vacation areas, it's pretty easy to go scroll through those listings and say, I can make this listing the number one in this market. I can make it the most interesting when you're scrolling with just this design wall. So for example, I had a prospect, he's not my client currently, two Florida listings, and we managed in Florida for a while. We don't right now, but very much like you go and you scroll that market, it's so ripe for this kind of thing. Because a lot of the listings are just like, this is a beautiful Florida home with a pool. Cool. Great. That's great. But there's nothing like this where it's like, hey, I want to stop and scroll and click it, even because I'm curious and click that thing. And I very much pitched this idea to him because I was like, your listings are great. They're cute. They're fine. They have pools, but you're not converting because you're not unique. You're not scroll stopping. So that's the idea behind it is we actually look at the market too and say, how do we stand out?
Yeah, no, I mean, really, it's design and create your listing based on being scroll stopping, like based off of like, why are you unique? What's going to get people to stop and say, wow, that's a really cool property? How do you like mentally identify that property? One of the biggest problems I had when we went and stayed in the Pocono was like a year ago in the middle of winter time, and like in the middle of the week. So like there's just so much availability, thousands of properties. They're all really cool. And you're like, you almost get like analysis paralysis, like picking the right property. There's so many options. They're all cheap. It's like, and so it was the ones that stood out, not necessarily like they didn't necessarily have all the best designer, all the like all luxury or whatever, it was like they had like one or two things that really attracted me to them that I mentally was like, oh, that's the property with, the XYZ swing set, and like I mentally remembered that. And then I was like, okay, it's between the swing set one and then this other one, like, and it was like, those things stood out, even though all the other properties might have the exact same amenities. They were just kind of merged and blended in together.
There's like a stickiness to it. Like there's a certain stickiness to the right interactive thing. There's a stickiness to it where, listen, you could scroll and find other listings, and other listings will probably be cheaper too, because the whole point here is you can raise your nightly rate. But there's a stickiness to it. You're like, geez, like I got to try that, like, and it sticks in your brain. Like you're saying, like you're still scrolling through other listings, but you're like, that one with the really cool playhouse. Like my kids would love that. They'd have a blast there. That's stuck in your mind. And that's kind of the element we're looking for. We're looking for that stickiness.
Absolutely. Okay, cool, man. Well, as we're kind of wrapping up here, number one, how do people, if they're interested in learning more about this micro design idea or your property management, how do people get in touch with you and actually get a chance to talk to you about it?
Yeah, so my handle is right there in my title. Yep, there you popped it up. Merritt Badge MGMT. My company is called Merritt Badge Property Management. But yeah, pretty much that's my handle on everything. And you can just search my first name on Facebook. I'm extremely active on Facebook. That's probably my most active social platform. And from there we can get in touch and talk more about business, talk more about Airbnbs, and happy to meet anyone. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Merritt's pretty smart guy. So if you're interested in his services or the micro design idea too, feel free to reach out and connect with him. Merritt, as we're kind of wrapping up here, any words of advice to help people cash flow positive with their STRs? Could be about what we talked about or anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think my main point of advice is like, you can't half-ass it anymore. It's like, so if folks are like listening to this podcast, right? They're most likely already investors, or they're just interested in investing. Like the money is there for the folks who go all in. Like that's my word of advice. Like go all in. Like obviously do the data. Like call Kenny. Like like make sure the numbers are there and make sure it's going to cash flow. But the days of the vanilla listings are over. Like go all in. And so that's really going to be how you win in this industry now, is just being willing to say, hey, listen, I'm going to put my capital in upfront. Scarier, more capital than most forms of real estate upfront, but I'm going to do it so that I get those returns. And I think everyone will end up being happier in the long run, right? Your vendors, your manager, yourself, your wallet will end up being happier in the end game. So that's my one word there.
I love it. Well, cool. Thank you so much, Merritt, for being on the show. And I hope everyone learned something. I definitely learned a few things, took away a few nuggets here. It was a really good conversation. Thank you, Merritt. And I hope everyone enjoyed listening to this episode of Cash Flow Positive.
Great. Thanks for having me.